whenever you're ready.
Well, my colleague, Nadia, actually brought me into a segue into my speech today. Today I want to talk to you about a personal story about how I became love. People always ask me, how do I show up all bubbly and excited like the world is in chaos? Well, it wasn't easy. I didn't stumble into love. It didn't fall into my lap. I had to become it. I had to embody it. I had to actually trust it. And for so long I didn't. This idea of this love, this technicolor cover of love, what did it look like? The world said that it was so easy to catch. It was in an individual. It was in a thing or anything. Just a glimpse of it would have satisfied me. I searched for it for long time to find love, and really, particularly, I realized it was from my mother. I wanted her to love me. I wanted to love me. I wanted her to love me so deeply. It made me sick inside. It turned in my belly because I wanted her to love me. That connection to the womb, that first love, that connection from the child and that embryo to the mother. That love, I wanted it so bad. I could taste it in my tongue. But the thing is, I wasn't my mother's first love. My mother's first love was my sister. She was born before me with the same name, looked exactly like me. But you know what happened? She died at 6 months. And as much as I tried to be that Moji Sola that she lost, I could never be her. Because all that love she poured into her, I just kept reminding her of her trauma. And then after that, she lost the person that she loved, the love of her life, my father. He was murdered and gunned down by a young juvenile at the age of 35. And I'm 43. I outlived my father. Imagine coming from a whole country, leaving everything that you know to come here for this American dream and to lose all of that. So I feel her pain in my womb also. I took on her pain, her trauma. I took on the fact that I looked just like my father. So I became the target of her pain. Did I ask for it? No, I didn't. No one wants to be the target of pain. But I had to take it because she had no one else. So I took that. I understood that I couldn't be loved from my mother the way I wanted to, or what TV said was, or Sesame Street said it was. And I had to take that. I had to take her trauma. I had to take her anger and her rage. And as much as we don't want to be like our mothers, sometimes I used to have that anger and rage, and I used to punch holes in walls because I was angry. Why couldn't she love me? She loved my brothers and sisters, but they didn't have that baby's same name, Moji Sola. They had their own identity. I had to figure out who I was and what was love to me. And even through that trauma, I kept searching and searching down this road, climbing mountains in different areas just to find this idea of what love was. And I still couldn't find it. I went to the military. I suffered from dealing with military sexual trauma from someone that I trusted, my CEO, my NCO, who was supposed to be my leadership. I dealt with an abusive husband who betrayed me and hurt me. As much as I loved him, he took that from me. He choked me when I had our daughter. And still I pressed on, still searching for this idea, this technical color of love. What did it look like? And even dealing with situations when I had a gun put to my head, being raped, all I thought about is getting back home to my child because I'm the only one that's there for her. I'm her only source of love. One thing my daughter taught me was how to love in a different way. I never knew I could love somebody as much as I loved my daughter. Just because my mother didn't love me the way that I wanted to doesn't mean I couldn't love her. So I decided to break that chain and show up as love. And my husband now, my best friend, I love him so much. You know, the one thing he told me, he said, I don't have to understand you, I just have to love you. And in that point I said, okay, I love me. Even with the disability, I love my little Kane. This is my little baby right here. Even with my disabilities, even though I'm not the same person I used to be, even though people didn't love me and disappointed me, I still can love me and I can choose me and I have agency at every time. People ask me why. Yoga saved my life. Yoga allowed me to heal, to understand who I was, emotionally, physically, and spiritually, to understand who I need to be, to show up in this world as love itself. Love is unconditional, has no conditions, additions, no attachments. It just is. And you know what I did? Because I'm crazy. I tattooed love on the back of my back in Chinese. Yes, I checked it several times. It doesn't say and I put my stamp on my back, engraving to myself that I am love and I deserve to be love and I should receive love in every way that it is and how it shows up. And I can love whoever I want without restrictions. And so, with that being said, I am love. I became love. Not because it's some happy-go-lucky thing, it's because I was forced into it. What I couldn't reach, I had to create and become the alchemist and shape it and transform it for me. So then I can show up in the world and become love. So, I want to tell you all, love can be whatever you want it to be. It doesn't have to be what society says it has to be. It doesn't have to be like the TV. It can be the way you want, as simple and as big and as grand. Lauryn Hill says, love is not boastful, love is not loud, but I want it to be loud. I want it to be big, like an orchestra. I want it to serenade me. I want to live it. I embody it now. And this is the story how I became love. Thank you.
Give you a hug right now.
She is love. Oh, great reviews. So love.
That was a very loving speech.
And listening to you is like therapy and therapeutic.
It's so vulnerable and it has so much compassion.
Thank you for sharing your secrets with us. Let us come to empower the strangers. Thank you.
You have a very powerful voice and you have this like master control of it to know bring audience attention to it, and also like you're a very powerful woman. And I also notice that when you are delivering your speech, you stay calm, you stay in love, you deliver that in a lovely way that not everyone can do it.
Yeah, it's okay, yeah. Everyone good? Woo, we're like a
Chair?
Oh, yeah.
Because you might want to sit in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, sit and we'll watch it.
Thank you.
All right, feedback, please.
Oh, so it does feel, you know, you really, I mean, Moji so. You are love. I believe it. If anyone is love, you are love. It's like the space can't contain. It's interesting because you actually like are so contained in terms of like your presence, like whatever is going on. Like you were so in the moment of the speech, like in such a beautiful way. It's like wow, like because it feels in this beautiful. It feels like it's all just free flowing, and yet it also feels like so well crafted that it's like, how is she doing this? If it's like also feels so extemporaneous, like it's just a beautiful delivery and style. I just want to start with that, like just the way you really do your strength. It's almost like, I mean, again, like the scope of which, like how much we learned about you, and just also like the different, like the people that like were in your life, in the speech, and just sort of how you crafted this like this timeline. And quite frankly, I mean, you're telling us you managed to have such strength through and such love that really just radiates, even as you're talking about some real like traumatic like like these seismic things that like, you know, could have had all these other effects, and yet you like I kept on wanting to be like, and still I rise. That was what I was like feeling a little bit like. That's where I was like with the Maya Angelou of it all, because like it's just like it's such your story is so incredibly inspiring and powerful, and also you tell it so beautifully. So like you really have an incredible way with words. I think that we've talked about that before, but this was just, and it's so interesting because like the technicolor and like the kind of things that you come back to in the speech and the motifs that you really, it's a masterclass of like language, but also like at the heart of this story is your mom, and like you so poetically talk about that, what that relationship should be, and here you are, mother, and like the way it comes back to you and your daughter, and that you're like there for her, and you are going to be there for her, the only source of love. I think you said, you know, like in that contrast with your mother, and yet the kind of generosity you give to your mother, and sort of acknowledging, even while acknowledging the anger that you had too, but also the understanding that you had. Your spirit is just so alive throughout. Like I feel like there is so much. I'm gonna leave time for Tim. Tim's gonna have a lot to say, I'm sure. But but the like the first love before you, and like the, you know, this like having to, like, I think, I don't know if we can all directly relate, but I mean, I can actually in some ways, but like trying to live up to this, really this like ghost of a, right? Like, and giving, and having the name, like being like what that is, to be saddled with that, and that could never be her. And then you like lost her husband, and he's 35. I mean, and the acknowledgement of like, you know, being older. You know, and that kind of like acknowledgement, and just the target of, you know, being the target of pain, and then, you know, these kind of abuses, and like the things that could have really stripped you of so many things, and that you pressed on. I you know, you really, and then yoga, being, you know, talking. It's just not what I necessarily expected to be such a source, but I'll tell you, I haven't done that enough, and I'm thinking I should really be going into it, and I want to talk to you about it, because damn. But I mean, and just the play on love and the words. I'm sorry, I'm rambling, because like it was beautiful, and so like exquisitely powerful while still being vulnerable. It's just so many layers. So like, thank you for sharing such, like you are love, and you shared, you on a love on a platter, and in the best way. So thank you.
So Mo, was it last week, I think, you guided me through a meditation when we
Really?
met for student hours, and it was like, completely, it was like
jealous.
such a beautiful moment that we shared.
Oh.
Like you extended that to me, which I feel very grateful for. Because it's not something I do as much as I probably should, but you were very kind to share that with me. I want to say how, and this was extraordinary in many ways, but I'll get to that in a second. But the way that you were able to go back, because we heard about the trauma and your mom and forgiveness right off the bat in this class, but we didn't hear much more than that, right? So we had that was there at the beginning, and the fact that you circled back to that, but you went back to connect the dots over the three speeches, I thought was a really interesting and very, very powerful and compelling choice. And I think some of it too, I mean, some of the notes I've given you on your first two speeches was that I wanted you to go into more depth, more texture of the storytelling. I mean, you certainly delivered on that here. But it feels like, you know, you are very much this, you radiate this to people. I mean, everyone can see it and feel it. And not just in this class, but like in Gutman and, you know, walking down the street and these various ways in lecture when I'm lesson on Mondays. And, but this was the sort of backstory of all of that, right? That you gave us the sort of the long and not easy journey from the places in your past to this, how you show up and how you kind of manifest in this way. And so this could feel superficial or cheeky, or, you know, I mean, and it's also audacious, right? To like say that I am love, like, that's high risk, high reward. Like, you know, I mean, you could that. I mean, if I walk in, I'm like, I am, you know, the light, you know, I am love, I am justice, you know. I mean, that could go in another direction, right? That could be like, oh, okay, you think you're all that? It's like that could come across as actually being audacious and maybe even arrogant or like delusional. Or like, I mean, there are lots of ways that could go in another direction. And it didn't, and I think part of it is that you were in complete control of this narrative, right now. I mean, obviously not always, right, because life is complicated, but like the way that you told this was just like you were in full control of it, and you were like, I'm gonna tell how I became this, and you're like, and then you had that moment at the very beginning, which I loved. You're like, I didn't stumble into love, and it didn't fall in my lap, you know, and you were like, I'm gonna tell you the story now. And it did really feel like you were weaving this backstory to this person that you've been becoming and that you've earned in your life and over your life. And I just thought that was so beautiful. And the fact that you have transformed and turned the painful dynamic between your mother and you and your sister who passed, right? That was a particularly poignant part of the story, like that you looked like her, had her name, like that you were almost, I mean, it's, the way I took it, like you were meant to replace her because she had passed, and then that was never gonna happen. And that was just a number of levels, a kind of devastating part of the story. But the fact that you almost flipped the story, transformed or turned the pain of your mom's story with you, your relationship with your mother, into like your relationship with your daughter. In that moment where you're like, I could feel her pain in my womb, right? The way that the transfer of that, and then the beauty that you were able to sort of birth and become, and all of that. I thought that was so remarkable, and it really felt very redemptive. And yet you don't ever lose your composure. Like you're I, as someone who has been in a cane for a while now too, recently freed from it for the time being anyway. Like the cane to me really does feel like it gives you a kind of like you're like it's like an edifice almost. Yeah. It's like it grounds you and it gives you strength in a way that, to me, is also really redemptive and powerful, right? This instrument that you have, because someone might call it a disability, you even refer to it as such, can like turn into something that is actually part of your power as a presenter is also another piece of this. But you never lose your composure, and you also never lose your sense of humor. Like you're like, I mean, you're many things, but you're also very funny. Like, but it's a particular kind of humor, and you don't ever lose that. Like you have these moments where you sprinkle it in, right? Even the moment with the tattoo, and I tattooed on in Chinese, and yes, I made sure that the translation was right. I mean, like that kind of moment, which is like this really empowered moment at the end of the speech, where you've literally tattooed it onto your body, right? You still have the composure and also the presence of mind to turn that into a little bit of a flamboyant, moment of humor. So that was also really, really great. The one piece that I would push you on a little bit is to talk a little bit more about how yoga in particular saved you. That was the one piece of the story that I felt wasn't as fully sort of woven into the rest of it. It almost felt like a bit of an aside, that like you have this thing that you've come to recently, and it did. But I don't doubt that, having experienced that with you, I don't doubt at all that it did. But I'm interested in like how it did, and was it the spiritual dimension of it? Is it the healing dimension of it? Is it the physical dimension of it, right? Because yoga is very physical in that way, in terms of breath and body and all of that. Maybe it's all of those things. It probably is, and maybe that's another speech. But that felt to me to be the one thing that I was like, oh, I want to know more about that. The rest of it, I felt really like you wove together this tapestry in a way that was really, really remarkable. And I also want to say that it is hard. You talked about forgiveness in your first speech, and as I said, and I said this to Yvonne in my notes after that, the first speech is, it's really hard to get to that place. It's really hard to get to a place of forgiveness and generosity and of love towards people who have hurt you or have been hurt in their lives. And one of the things that I really appreciated about what you did here is that you didn't downplay your own pain in service to the kind of the redemptive forgiveness and love, right, at the end of that you've come to. And I think sometimes that can happen. I've seen people sort of be like, well, I have to forgive and forget in order to get to a place, right? And it doesn't matter what I think about that, but it feels to me like one can maintain the dignity of one's own experience and all that comes with that, and also get to a place, right? But you don't have to downplay that or diminish that or get rid of it in order to do that. And so I appreciated how you kept all of that elevated in this speech and woven together. Thank you for this. I really, really appreciate this.